everybody, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is your intrepid host, Tim Jalsma, and with me I've got Her Holiness. This is where you say hi.
The Reverend Tracy?
Oh, right.
Is that where I'm supposed to? The holiness that is me,
there
the Reverend Tracy.
Boom. How you doing?
Pretty good considering. Portland's kind of on fire. I don't want to lead what order we go over things, but that's the elephant in the room, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's wow, just seeing some of the pictures, like the one that was in Salem yesterday, where it was like noon with no filters and everything was orange. Somebody had a picture of like San Francisco and compared it to a shot of like Blade Runner, and it looked the same. Breathing wise, I don't have any lung problems, but I felt like, just physically just felt like everything pressing on me. But I know you've dealt with like asthma and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I'm fairly open about that. So, I mean, God, yeah, it felt like last night the sky was really reddish orange where we were at. We went out for a walk, and then this morning it didn't seem too terrible. And, I was only barely conscious anyway because I had problems sleeping, which I'm assuming has to do with all the smoke in the air, maybe.
Yeah, I imagine.
But, so that was a rough morning. And then we went out to actually go just run one errand. And it's smoky. And like I said to my friends, it kind of reminds me of when I was a kid in Texas and how everybody would be smoking brisket and meats. Like, that's exactly what it smells like outside to me right now. So I was like, wow, and it's just so thick. And just running out and back, one errand, and I stayed in the car, just because asthma and other things.
Right.
But, my husband ran in and got everything we needed, and we came back, and like I was saying, he was like, man, my eyes are on fire. I need a minute because I just got home and I can't see. So it's pretty intense. People are evacuating. We've lost some towns and a small handful so far of lives, and I'm waiting on all the conspiracy theories to now come out as to what happened. So that'll be fun, I'm sure.
Oh, I already had somebody that a former coworker of mine on Facebook already is like linking out an article to the highly reputable Law Enforcement Weekly. Stating that that there's suspicion that this is like some sort of concerted actual criminal activity going on, that you got people going out and intentionally lighting fires.
Yeah, gas buckets and such. I've actually already heard this from someone, actually a friend of ours. And I think it's interesting that I mentioned, like, oh, I wonder if it has something to do with a cigarette butt, because I've seen a lot of cigarette butt jokes. And that's how I found out that the California fire was about the gender reveal, was because of all the fires and, the memes of like, oh, now everybody knows it's a boy. So I was just making that link. And this person actually said to me, it's like, oh yeah, all sorts of conspiracy theorists, but it's all over the news that it's Molotov cocktails. And I was like, is it though? I've personally gotten to the point where I'm following more stuff from like the BBC, just to kind of actually really understand what's going on. But I think we could honestly do a whole other episode on the whole fake news thing in America. So not to get too much on that one.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think the argument I've heard about what's going on that makes the most sense to me is the fact that California has in the past used prison inmates for forest fires. And with the COVID outbreak being what it is, and a lot of, if you're in a prison, you're in a cooped up petri dish. And a lot of people that would normally be fighting these fires are now sick. And there's a lot of sickness to that overall because the prisoners, if they happen to get out because they were in prison and they had felonies, they can't become a firefighter, but they're still doing a firefighter job, and it just speaks to a lot about what is going on wrong with this country, and just everything is burning down.
It's a clusterfuck. It's an absolute clusterfuck, and it's just a lot of things going wrong at once. But I just, like I said to my husband, it's like, it's interesting to me that the downed power lines and the cigarette butts, and hell, let's talk about the fact that there's a lot of novice campers right now, which me being an outdoorsy person, I've been pretty aware of, that don't know how to put out fires. Like, all of these reasonable reasons that could have caused this fire.
Yeah.
Those are the conspiracies right now. Really? Like, horses, not zebras much? Like, when did that change? But anywho, so I'm sure, and I looked it up very quickly, and it seems like at least one person seems confident that it was winds that knocked over a tree, that knocked over a power line. So tale as old as time is we have a lot of, brush and things and shit, because that's nature. Fires do happen in nature. That happens.
Imagine.
However,
yeah.
we exacerbate it when it's things like not a lightning strike causing it, but a man-made tower falling down and causing it. Or if it is a cigarette butt, or if it was a campfire. I don't know. I'm hoping somebody, I guess, figures it out definitively, but how do you ever really know for a fact what caused the fire?
I mean, they have ways of finding out, I guess, ultimately, but something this widespread, I mean, it would be tough to figure out the one thing that caused this whole domino bullshit to land the way it did, but, hopefully something can change so we can get back to some semblance of normal, like you with the haunts.
To kind of go into that, I know I'm pretty sure I posted on the Friends Talking Nerdy page about, the little snippet of me doing my bit. I think it goes along, like, I think I have a curse that I will never have a recording of my own performances. It will never fucking happen, because every time I've tried to set up a recording or get one or ask for one that already exists, something happens and it just doesn't happen. So literally there's recordings of every bit but mine. And which I actually, it's fine. Like, I'm honestly, me, I'm not the type, my ego is not that in it. It's just like I'm trying to do page content, and that's hard right now because, I mentioned this page and wanting to do content, and then Corona came immediately after.
Yeah.
So it's been rough, and I'm working on some ideas. So, but we did have the Haunted Drive-In at Lakewood Arts Center for the Arts.
How'd that go?
And it was an absolute hit. We played, the cult classic. We did, Night of the Living Dead. So I don't even think I need to tell you about that one because, it's Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
And I had actually never seen it before, which was funny because I have that whole fear of zombies thing, so I didn't know how it would go. But it was fine. It was not, super realistic. They just kind of had darked out eyes. But yeah, so we did this as a drive-in event. I guess a lot of people are trying to do drive-in events, and we just decided let's add some actors and stay like super COVID compliant, because that was the number one. The actual main director was talking about, because it would just be too fucking meta for us to get the plague while showing a movie about a plague.
Yeah.
So let's just not do that. So we actually all wore masks the entire time. Like, we did our best to stay 6 feet apart. Like, but obviously it's dark. Obviously when we did our stage call, because we're not going to deny a bunch of actors a stage call. But if you notice, like, we were quite careful for the most, like, not for the most part, we were very careful.
Right.
Because otherwise I probably wouldn't have done it.
Understandable. And from the pictures I saw, everything looked fun. And, I'm glad to see drive-ins actually picking back up again in terms of popularity. Professor Aubrey actually had a chance to go see, with a friend of hers, The Lost Boys. She saw 2 movies, The Lost Boys and Mad Max Fury Road. I had posted a picture of her on Facebook because she went dressed up as cosplay. I made a joke about I turned her into a wrestling fan or something like that, but she had a whole setup, and she actually had a really good time being able to go out and watch that movie. And I still have not gone to a drive-in movie yet. I miss the movies.
Maybe you'll get a chance. I know there's some talks about doing more.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, oh gosh, the crowd ate it up. Like, because first of all, it's a drive-in movie. It's something to go out and do. And then you just add in just zombies. That's all we did. We did zombies. There was a few little staged bits, like, the awkwardly long murder scene with the trowels.
Oh,
like, we played that out with a mom and her 2 daughters dressed up. And so there were some things, like, there was one point, like, at the beginning, at the long entry, you know, we had Scruffy the janitor, like, just up on the stage sweeping, and he just kind of sits there and, like, cocks his head and just, like, starts watching this insanely long, drawn-out intro. And then I actually got turned. After my bit, I get attacked, and I got turned. So that was actually really fun to go quickly zombie myself up. And then you have all of these zombies that are dressed in normal clothes, and this one ringmaster zombie in this red jacket just, like, stumbling. And to me, like, a successful haunt moment is when you've made eye contact with somebody and they let you know that they know it was a mistake. And that actually happened. We allowed the windows to be cracked just a little bit because it was hot. And I'm out there and I'm, like, lurching, and I see this girl just very sitting upright, giving all of the signs I would look for of somebody to get, like, in a standard haunt. And so I just, like, do this thing where I just, like, brought my head down and then just, like, cocked it up to the side and just made eye contact with her. And I, honest to God, heard her go, "Oh my God, what have I done?" And the crowd was awesome. They ate it up. They loved it. They were very appreciative. We didn't have a single jerk, which is more than I can say for a typical haunt season.
Oh, that's good.
And we're working on doing more, so I'm excited to see what I end up with info-wise, and I'll probably share that with the community, to be fair, because let's be real. Don't we all kind of want to save Halloween?
Yeah, I mean, one of the few cool holidays. Everybody gets to pretend to be somebody that, you know, they want to be. I can, you know, put on a Superman shirt and parade around with my tattoo. Look at me, I'm Superman, you know, type of deal. It's fun. Everybody needs to let loose.
Yep. And, you know, I can just put on a corset and be a thing, and nobody cares, because, hey, girl in corset, that works. That is acing the costumes.
In Portland? Yeah. Well, what you were speaking about earlier with getting the audience attention, the only thing close that I've ever had done that, when I was in college, I took theater, and I had a part in a play called Night Must Fall, a classic 1930s British murder mystery. And there was one point where we were going through the middle of a scene, and a character left the room, and they were supposed to slam the door on the set, but it shook the wall, and there was a mirror that fell down. And the mirror was important to the final scene of the play being up. So one of the characters who was in a wheelchair turned to me and goes, everybody was in English accents. They were, "Hubert, put the mirror back on the wall." And then me, I'm in college, typical me reply, I'm like, "Okay." And pick it up and put it back on. The audience just went nuts. I didn't even attempt to do an "all right," you know, type of deal, or, you know, do you get a maid for that? But, you know, me making a fool of myself, that's never happened before.
Oh man, making a fool of yourself is, like, probably the number one thing that got me into performing. Like, it's just so fun. Like, I get it. I totally get being terrorized of public speaking, because I mean, there's a lot of people that would, like, I would literally rather die than do half of the things you've done. And I don't get that part of it, but I guess because I have my own irrational fears, like, I do get having a fear that nobody else understands. So even though I'm that weird inverse, because more people would rather die than speak publicly. Right. It's just interesting to me. It's like, so I kind of get it, but I don't at the same time. So I'm like, it's just talking in front of people. Just be you. But, yeah, that was actually a comment I got when I did stand up in Arizona. A really good friend of mine that has done it for years and still does here in Portland, he was like, "You still manage to be you on stage," which doesn't happen a lot in stand up, I guess. Like, a lot of them slip into characters. I get it. Haunt work, it's way easier if I slip into a character. Same thing with murder mystery. But yeah, comedy is kind of different too than that. But
yeah. Well, I know with me, with public speaking, I was at my best when I could be somebody else. So being able to become a different character, you know, people that know me now would probably be shocked that I could, you know, pull something like that off. But you know, just being able to get lost.
Too.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was a performance I chickened out of in my theater arts class, and I wound up just standing up there and lip syncing instead of doing this awesome, cute thing I had planned because I just had no confidence. And then I was like, it hit the reality point of like, oh shit, I'm going to do this in front of all the people who bully me daily. Let's not say we did, and I'll just take an F on the project. But yeah, now it's like, it just doesn't really faze me too much, I guess.
Well, I mean, you do it often enough. I mean, if for me, if I had to face that, working in front of an audience again, I'd really have to pump myself up, or like find a character or something like that. Because sometimes, what do they call it, projection or something, where, like when I was in school and they were teaching about acting, it was just pretend to be a character. Take the aspects of something else that you think applies and try to be like that. Whether it's kind of mimicking a walk, kind of changing your speech pattern a bit, something like that.
Oh yes, like my early haunt. People all have voices. The first year when I was the nun, it was very pompous and like this and very breathy and deep. And I had like this huge thing that I did in bits, and then the carnival barker, I don't know if this will because of the recording, but I just like, it's just how you shape your mouth, and then you just start talking, and then you can bring it up a high pitch, and then you're just a totally other person. But that was disarming because people didn't expect that voice. And so there's a lot with just doing goofy stuff, like depending on what you're doing. But I think for me, probably a lot of it came just because I did a lot of escapism as a kid.
Right.
Like going back to being bullying, right? Like if you practice pretending being not even practice, if you're just laying there in your head pretending to be somebody else, isn't that essentially practicing it?
It is. It definitely is. I mean, it's. I was kind of the same way too. Growing up a wrestling fan. I mean, other wrestling fans kind of at times will pretend to be, some of their favorite performers. I mean, from fans from my era, everybody can break out with like a Macho Man Randy Savage impression. Ooh yeah, and you're becoming somebody else when you do that. Snap into a Slim Jim. Yeah. I loved him in the Spider-Man movie. Bonesaw is ready.
God, is that what that's? I really have never gotten into wrestling. I will admit it. Like, I knew who Hulk Hogan was because I think my dad was secretly in love with him, or that was the person he pretended to be. I think was Hulk Hogan.
Oh, boy.
But and then later The Rock. But that was more because he started doing other stuff. But I've never. And then, of course, everybody heard of, it was Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? Wasn't he the one who was the one that died?
Oh, the one that...
The dive that happened, like, it was very dramatic.
A number of them died very dramatically. You got Owen Hart in 99, during the middle of a pay-per-view. He was playing a character... Later. 2000...
I think later.
It's 2007 was the death of Chris Benoit. And well, he's the one who murdered his family and then killed himself. So,
Jesus! No. The thing I'm thinking of was a ring issue. Like they were jumping down. I thought. I want to say it had something to do with coming down, but I barely followed it, so it was probably on in the background of the news when I was a kid. Texas, we're more into NASCAR and football down there. Like that's more what I was exposed to against my will for the most part that I know more about. But,
right. People driving, turning left. You do a great job, pal.
Turn left.
Yeah. We get it.
Turn left, hit the gas.
Yeah, and then the one day Dale Earnhardt turns right. Hey, anyway.
Too soon? It's still too soon for Dale Earnhardt ducks.
Oh, God. I was an asshole in my 20s. I was working at a gas station, and shortly after that happened, this kid came in and was like, oh, Dale Earnhardt, I'm so sad. He was the greatest driver ever. And I was like, if he's so great, why is he dead? And I regret saying that, but the kid was so sad. I made him
man, I bet. Oh God.
Yeah, that's on me, world. My bad.
Yep, everybody has their first #too soon moment.
Oh, my sister. Nothing can ever top what she did. In high school, we were at a youth group or something like that when I was still pretending to be Christian, and there was a guest there. He was a high school student, but he was like a foreign exchange student from Haiti in the 90s. during that era when Clinton had, had some military intervention happening down there. And at one point during the group chat, when this guy was talking, my sister said something along the lines of, well, hopefully Bill Clinton doesn't kill your family. And she immediately burst into tears. I'm looking at her like, what? And just... it was awkward. I mean, thankfully the guy ended up, forgiving her, and all was cool and whatnot. But I will never step in something that bad. Thank goodness.
Man, I don't know if I can think of any major big one. I have had my accidental, there's a racist term I learned as a child that I didn't know was racist until just now. Had that happen, but I'm trying to think of the too soon thing. I'm sure I will later. When I actually get to sleep tonight, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, God willing.
Yeah.
Or universe or whatever you believe in.
Something. I believe in me. But anyway.
I am my own God.
I know. And what a God I am. Oh man, this time of year we should have been at Rose City Comic Con this year.
Yeah, I was actually really looking forward to going this year. I didn't get to go last year, but, So what about you? Did you get to go last year at least?
No, not last year. I was starting a new job at the time, and so I frankly just didn't have the funds to go. And the 2 previous years before that, I had reasons not to go at that point, but I went enough in 2016 and 2017. A lot of great memories, like when we got tattoos.
Yeah, we got tattoos. Maybe we can I'll share a picture of mine. We should do a side-by-side or something. Be like, we're actually next to each other near the chairs.
Tattoo birthdays.
I don't think, was I dressed up as anything? I don't think I was that day.
Not that day. You went all weekend, and I went all weekend as well, but, we mainly did not hang out except for that day. I think day 2, you and, your friend Steve showed up in costume.
Yeah, we did the Hands of Blue, the 2x2, because he was going to do it by himself. I'm like, you can't do Hands of Blue 2x2 by yourself. So I just did Femme Fatale look and joined him. But yeah, you and I, we had actually, that's the magic thing to talk about, right? Like, we were still had our hiatus. We had kind of a falling out as friends. I saw you. And I think I texted you, didn't I? Didn't I say, do you just want to talk? It felt awkward. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, I was actually talking to Aubrey about this today, and it was like a sitcom, because it was a hiatus at the time, but we kept bumping into each other every 5 minutes. It was like a bad sitcom, like everywhere you turn, oh my god. And there was a point where I walked by and you were at a booth of somebody selling something, and I started up chit chat, and you were just like, we're talking. And then after that you sent the text, and then we ended up talking and getting tattoos at that point, so it was all good at that point. So we went Comic-Con and tattoos, but I still think it's funny. Everyone thinks it's just the weirdest fucking thing that I got a tattoo at Comic-Con, and I'm like, I don't know, it seems like naturally they would set up there, but I guess it's not as normal. I guess that's kind of something that's cool about Portland, because we're kind of Ink City. Yeah. But
that was a really cool experience. I got my Mama Tama tattoo, which is weird and interesting because I guess she has such a following that somebody on the train randomly was like, "Is that a Mama Tama on your arm?" And I'm like, did I accidentally get tattooed by a local celebrity and I just don't know? And then I never looked it up. So I very well could have been tattooed by a local celebrity, and I still have no fucking idea, because I don't follow up on some of the random questions in my head sometimes.
Same here. I mean, I don't think my person was a celebrity. I was jealous that you got a Tegaderm bandage, the Tegaderm the clear ones, because you were able to show it right away.
Yeah, those things are awesome, man. I've gotten a few tattoos with those now. Mm-hmm. And just the heel, and maybe I'll take I'll go find when it was fresh and take a picture, because it healed beautifully.
Yeah.
And with all the works, they did a lot of shadings. It's a Catwoman themed. She called it her heart butt. So it's a Catwoman themed heart, but it's got like netting, and of course I'll obviously share a picture now that I'm talking about it. But there's like a lot of shading that I didn't notice until like well after it healed. I was kind of looking, I was like, damn, that's actually just a solid job. It's a good tattoo. Mm-hmm. So yeah, good memories there. And my husband, my stepkids, and I, the last time we all got to go, which was the year before last, we all got to dress up together as Gravity Falls characters. So we got to bond over making costumes. So there's that element now to me, in addition to just my general geeking out and love for costuming and becoming characters. Like I got to do that with my family too, which was a really cool experience.
That's what I love about it. The first con I went to, I actually covered it for... that was my first big assignment for Latino Review Media in 2016. It also coincided when my marriage was, finally going kaput. So, it should have died a long time ago, but that's a different story for a therapist. But
we'll talk about our failed marriages another time, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, somebody had a picture. One of my friends in Oklahoma had the picture from Salem on her Facebook page, and I just had to remark, "Oh, I guess my ex-wife was in Salem today," But anyway, yeah. But what I loved about Comic-Con in 2016 was the freedom. Just to your point, everybody dressing up, whether they were quote unquote beautiful people or not, everybody was dressing up and being themselves, and I loved the creative atmosphere of it more than anything. I mean, the first time I went there, I was walking, walked the hall, just constantly walking, just soaking everything in. Tomorrow is going to be, as we record this, tomorrow is going to be September 11th, and that's going to be the 4-year anniversary of when I actually got to talk to Stan Lee. That was pretty awesome.
Not usually the anniversary everybody thinks about on 9/11, but that is a really way cooler one to think about on 9/11.
Well, believe me, that point was not lost on me when it happened too, because we're tomorrow, 19 years. That is insane. But thinking,
God, there are now adults that weren't born, and I have very distinct memories about where I was when and stuff like that's nuts. But anyway, yeah. But unless we totally want to get off on a topic of 9/11 right now.
No, we'll say
the
that.
The world's burning. Let's talk about that fun time and back in the OOOs.
Now I'm thinking about that Family Guy gag where Peter tried to impersonate James Woods and was going to make a comedy called September 11th, 2000 Fun. And, but anyway.
See, I think Family Guy, and I think when Lois was running for was she trying to be mayor, I think, and all she was told was to make talking points, and the only thing she would say is 9/11, and people would gasp and clap, if she had a long pause between the 9 and the 11.
Well, when it wasn't even a gasp, it was like a huh? Oh yeah, that was.
It's you just say words and people clap. That's how politics works, apparently. I guess the cartoons tried to tell us. But 9,
we were
11.
warned. Yeah, we were warned. But like I said, when I was, there that day, getting the courage to talk to him, I did think back, 15 years previous, and just how much had changed with me, and how that, even though I was, at that point in 2016 in a pretty bad place, the fact that I was there amongst a bunch of creative folks, being able to talk to one of my heroes, to me that felt like I was actually honoring the memory of everybody that did pass that day. And it may seem silly, it may seem superficial and whatnot, but what I learned from 9/11 more than anything, since we are going to talk about it apparently, is that you got to treat each day as the gift that it is, because you never know, when it's going to end for you.
Case in point, also everything happening in the world today. It's one thing or another. Yeah. There's always something going on, and if there's not something going on here, there's something devastating going on somewhere else. So it's You can talk about it or you cannot.
Exactly. So with that, let's switch topics. Let's talk about some of our top 5 favorites. Returning segment here. Yeah, so what we did is we thought, let's talk about our top 5 favorite TV shows from the year Tracy was born. What year is that?
1985.
All right.
Was it? God, never mind. Don't reference a song and not know who sang it, Tracy. Anyway, So 1985 is the lovely year that I was born. And I don't know, how do we want to do this? We're going to trade off, or do you want to go first?
You were born that year, so will you go first? But generally, when we do this, it's back and forth. You bring up one, and then go to me for my first choice, and just go from there. So, what is your first choice?
Awesome. So my first choice had to be a show that I just recall constantly in the background of my childhood. Murder, She Wrote.
Oh.
I loved the format to that one. I don't know, there's just something about her starting off in typing and like being this author and then having these wild adventures. And I can't tell you it didn't really stick with me, which is I guess why I'm starting with it, because it's not the one that stuck with me the most, but I do remember it a lot in the background. And just her crazy adventures, and it was a woman doing it too, which you didn't see a lot of still back when I was a kid, and even at the replay times. Yeah. Most of them were still the housewife type, so it was kind of cool to see my first female adventurer.
Yeah, the show wasn't made for a teenage boy at the time, so I was not tuning in each week to find to watch the latest adventures of Jessica Fletcher. So it took me by surprise later on once I discovered, Angela Lansbury's work. I watched a movie that she did with Frank Sinatra in the 60s called The Manchurian Candidate. And if you have not seen that, I implore you to watch it. It's a totally different side of Angela Lansbury that you never would have expected. But, she's one hell of a great actress. And what I didn't realize until later on, there's a guy who wrote for that show, J. Michael Straczynski, who ultimately went on to create the TV show Babylon 5. He was the head writer on the TV show that was on Netflix called Sense8, and did a lot of work in comic books with Marvel. In fact, speaking of 9/11, he wrote the Spider-Man 9/11 tribute comic. So it was interesting seeing somebody who you would not in any way, shape, or form think would work on a show like Murder, She Wrote. It was interesting to hear that he was a pretty prolific writer on that show. Shows you what I did in the 80s. I wasn't popular, so I watched a lot of TV, like my first show. Yeah, this show, so typical 80s. It was a first run syndicated show. Folks today probably don't even remember it, but it was a show called Small Wonder. It was about a guy who worked at a robotics lab who thought, what if I built a little robot girl? He built the robot girl, brought her home, and adopted her as a daughter. I mean, if that show tried to come around today, most people would probably assume he's going to do something bad with that robot. But it was just bringing the little girl home and how her adventures of trying to pretend to be human, even though she always talked in a monotone, like, I am a robot, I will eat. She always talked like that. And there was an episode I remember where Jesse the Body Ventura guest starred. Just cause, yeah, and I mean, it's the theme song. If you get a chance to hear the theme song, and I will put because I know the theme song is on YouTube. I'll put it on the Facebook page. But it's stereotypical 80s. She's a small wonder, busy like other girls, and just syrupy. It's one it's like I can't watch the show because it was bad even for the 80s, but it's one that I think back on with a smile on my face. So that was my choice. What's your next one?
Nice. So my second one. I think my brother and I both liked this show when it came on, mostly because our mother hated it so much. But Ripley's Believe It or Not. And that's because it was a little bit more geared towards the kids. It was in the morning, I want to say. I I want to say it might have even been one of those weekend morning things before, like, or around cartoons or near the end of cartoons. I don't remember. I just remember we'd catch it every now and then, and of course it would be something gross, and us kids would be like, "Oh, that's so wicked." And my mom's like, "I don't know why you want to watch this filth." She wasn't really like that. I mean,
everybody,
yeah, maybe she was, but maybe I don't think she ever said that about Ripley's.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, maybe you want to know how many marshmallows somebody shoved up their nose at one point,
Knowing me, I probably would have tried that, but I remember that show. It was actually on a regular schedule. It wasn't on in the morning. It was, I believe, on ABC, but Jack Palance was the host of the show at the time, and he's, welcome to Ripley's Believe It or Not, and he just has a way to kind of drawing out his words that are great. But yeah, it was great gross stuff.
And it made me want to go to the museum so bad, and then we wanted the books. Like, that's all we wanted to talk about for a while in school was all this Ripley's Believe It or Not stuff. And so it's kind of cool. I've actually seen those books around when I was volunteering at my stepdaughter's school still, in the before times. And and I actually saw, like, kids still looking at that. So I was like, yeah, see, it's neat because it's like, yeah, there's the two fat bikers that I guess are still the two fattest twin bikers. I don't know. They've just always existed. And they will always be the fattest twin bikers, I guess. But I'm pretty sure I saw them in the new book. So I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a classic just because of how it is a little bit. It's either in book form or TV, or you can go to a museum. It was kind of a multi-available experience.
It's still around, actually. For a while, I know Dean Cain hosted it, and that's weird when it was on TBS, but Bruce Campbell is now the host of Ripley's Believe It or Not. It is on some cable channels, so not on like ABC or anything like that, but it's still around. It's still around, and thankfully Dean Cain is not hosting it anymore. But, all right, my next choice is one I discovered after the fact, and it's called Moonlighting. Sybil Shepherd, Bruce Willis in his first big role. Just a really damn good show. When I was finally able to watch it in my 30s, I marveled at just how much ahead of the time that show was, just because it felt so cinematic compared to other shows at the time. I love the services like Pluto TV and whatnot, because with the free TV stuff, but being able to watch some of the older shows of the time and how they appear on TVs today, it just looks so bad. It looks like somebody made it for like a public access TV show. But Moonlighting does not have that. Had a great theme song. I think really the only... I only saw it on like DVD at one time, and that was when I worked at Best Buy in the late 2000s, and it's just one of those weird shows that kind of influenced a lot, but you don't see as much of anymore, and that's sad. It was a really good show. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Oh no, because I was trying to scroll through and knock some cobwebs out of my own brain as to what was even around that would have aired back in 85. Because, my experience with these shows were repeats on Nick at Night. And, later on in life, I'd see these. But, Moonlighting sounded familiar, and I knew it was a big deal. I did not know enough about it was Bruce Willis, but that just kind of makes sense because, like, he was kind of a pretty boy.
He was, yeah. I mean, because when Die Hard came along, people only associated him from the goofy dramedy that Moonlighting was. I mean, Moonlighting was a drama in the sense that it was 1 hour long, but it had a lot of comedic elements in it. And he was in a couple of movies before Die Hard, of course, and they were all comedies, and they all did not do well. So people, thought... I mean, they thought the same thing that when Michael Keaton got the role of Batman, why is that skinny guy an action star? I don't believe it until they watch it, and then they're totally freaking out because it was the greatest thing ever. But, if you do happen to come across Moonlight...
You mean actors can have range?
Imagine that. They don't all have to be steroid users for action movies.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that was the impression I ever got from what little I'd heard of Moonlighting was, oh, that's one of those shows that the moms like, It's like Dirty Dancing. Like my mom's favorite movie was Dirty Dancing, and I'm not dumb now as an adult. I know exactly why she liked that movie.
Yeah, no, I will say this in a lot. I mean, what I love about that show more than anything is the dialogue, because the Glenn Corden Karen, I believe, was the creator of that show. And what is that show that Patricia Arquette, Medium? He created Medium in the 2000s, but his inspiration for Moonlighting was old Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn movies, and the kind of the interplay between Sybil Shepherd, and she doesn't get enough credit for as good of an actress as she is, at least by today's standards. And obviously she was big in the 80s and whatnot, but her and Bruce Willis were really, really good together, even though they really didn't like each other. Like, I saw this movie, this documentary that they did about Moonlighting, and he ended up he's an asshole. Bruce Willis is just a big asshole, and like he he publicly thanked her for getting pregnant so that he could do Die Hard, and so he can get away from the show, which is just like, you're a dick, pal. You're a dick, but it's a good show.
Well, when you're done, you're done. I mean, sometimes the contracts and things, not to get too into it because I don't want to distract too much from the topic, but I don't understand like what kind of quality you're going to get out of making an actor do something. And I say that as somebody who's done at least some directing now. I've been a director for 2 years and I've got no interest in making you do anything because it's not going to be good. So I guess I kind of get it, because they have a vision for a show to last so long when it comes out. But I don't know, if somebody went out of a show, I would just try to write them off.
Yeah, I mean, especially if in that particular instance with Die Hard being as big as it was, yeah, write him out, or just end the show. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to go on, and because that was like the first big time that I remember where people were focused on, will they or won't they get together, and then once they got together,
the will they won't they dynamic was that. I wonder if that was one of the first ones, because remember, a lot of times it was just you had married people. They didn't really glorify singleness in older television.
It might have been
glorified
Cheers.
The couple, the American family, or the standard family.
It might have been Cheers that may have been the first big one. The Sam and Diane, will they, won't they, type of deal.
Oh, yeah, fair. That's right. That might have been. It depends on when that one came out, though. Because Moonlighting, wasn't that already out?
Moonlighting actually debuted in 85. Cheers started in 82.
Yeah, Cheers was 82, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
All right. What's your next one?
So my next one is another one that, it's one of those that I think everybody also has the theme song to it in their background, and they know it. The which is awesome, because this one actually tripped me up for a second. They're like, wait a second, The Twilight Zone was still airing in 1985? And it wasn't, but was, because what I learned when I, went to the awesome stunt brain that lives in my pocket is that they did a reboot that actually debuted about a month after I was born, September 27th of 85. So it had just come back after its first one. I think that was the first reinvent of it. After the initial one went down. I can't remember if they did one in the 70s, but I think the first one ended in really early. I didn't realize how old the Twilight Zone was.
Twilight Zone was, that was a show in the 60s, but that was pretty darn near what most people would consider the infancy of television. And the original show, of course, with Rod Serling is a master. Was a master at what he did, and the other talent that they had on the original show. I believe this version of the show came back because of a couple of years beforehand they had Twilight Zone the movie, that was produced and directed by 4 different directors. The bad thing about that is that John Landis was one of them, and there was an on-set killing in real life. There was a scene to where there was a character played by the actor Vic Morrow, who was going to go back into time in Vietnam and save 2 Vietnamese children. And the whole idea was that with war going on, he has these kids in his arm. At night, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, he's going through like a small creek bed or something like that. And what happened is, with all the pyrotechnics going on, it caused a helicopter that was flying very low above the actors to malfunction. And the helicopter crashed, instantly killing all 3 people and decapitating them. They filmed it. And the film is actually on YouTube, if you know where to look. And
no, I think I'm gonna hard pass on watching 3 humans get decapitated, but I'll take your word for it that it's up there.
It's
I mean, at least maybe with film quality back then, it's not too gruesome, but
oof. No. Actually, believe it or not, the clip that of the actual death that they showed in an HBO documentary, I believe in the early 90s. So that's where the clip came from, because because it was a big court case in the late 80s and whatnot, which John Landis was eventually acquitted for, in the same way that OJ was acquitted for, wink wink, not totally murdering 2 people. But the sad thing about the movie is that they had 4 directors: Landis, Steven Spielberg, Joe Dante, who ended up doing Gremlins, and George Miller, who at the time American audiences were just realizing his work with Mad Max. The bad part about what Landis did is that it kind of takes away from the very amazing segments of the movie that Joe Dante and especially George Miller did, because George Miller did a new version of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with, what is it? John... He was in Third Rock from the Sun.
Oh, shit. The big, he's just been in so much shit
John Lithgow,
now, right? John Lithgow. Yeah, he was in Dexter too, right? John Lithgow,
yeah,
that guy?
He was.
Okay, yeah.
But Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, if you get a chance to watch Twilight Zone the movie, watch that segment and the Joe Dante segment, because the Joe Dante segment is fun too, because that one is a retelling of an old Twilight Zone episode about a little kid who has magical powers to make anything occur. And what's funny is that he, in the story, is like traps these people and makes them pretend to be his family. One of them, the little sister, is played by Nancy Cartwright. And her character in the movie gets trapped in a cartoon and killed. Nancy Cartwright, who later would go on to be famous as Bart Simpson.
Yep.
So, really good movie, and that was a really good show too. I know Stephen King ended up writing a script for the Twilight Zone reboot in '85. Richard Matheson wrote a script that was ultimately turned into a movie in the late 2000s called The Box. The movie was horrible, but the TV show was fine, about a mysterious salesman who shows up with a box. And the whole thing is, like, if you open the box and press the button on the inside, you get all the money that you want, but somebody has to die. And it's Twilight Zone. It's great. It's fun. Definitely like it. We'll go on to my next choice. My next choice is a Saturday morning cartoon. I still watch plenty of Saturday morning cartoons, just not this one. But this has a lot of positive memories, and one very giant memory that still hurts me to this day. And that's Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. Yeah, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling.
I know the story that's coming.
You know the story that's coming, because...
I know the story that's coming.
But Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling was a silly cartoon that was quickly put together to capitalize on the sudden popularity of professional wrestling at the time. And what they did was they took all the good guys, and then they had all the bad guys, and then, they each rode in cars together, and then they would get into various adventures together. And then, like, in between the cartoon clips, you would have the actual wrestlers show up. But unfortunately, the one reason I won't watch it anymore is that Andre the Giant is also a character in that story. story. In terms of the show itself, surprisingly, Brad Garrett, who played, forgot his name on the show, but he was Ray's brother on Everybody Loves Raymond. He played Hulk Hogan. And the actor who played Uncle Phil on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, he was the Junkyard Dog. But, just the whole Andre thing, he scarred my childhood.
You've got to work on this.
We've
got to talk to Professor Aubrey or something and just take a handle on your therapy or something. I mean, he's dead now, right? It's safe. Hulk Hogan won.
Still, my heart has been hurt. I don't know how I will survive, but let's move on to your next choice.
You have to move on we'll move on with me moving on to my next choice, which we actually talked about this one a second ago, but I wanted to do these kind of in an order. I had a really hard time picking my favorite out of these last two. Mm-hmm. But Cheers, where everybody knows your name. God, it's such a great one. And that one, because it's on Netflix, I have...
Not anymore.
I had insomnia as a kid, and I still kind of have issues with sleeping. So I try to play things at night because it keeps that part of my brain just calm. And that's a good one. Up until you get to Kirstie Alley seasons. And that's where I found out that's about when I stopped liking that show. She's just, oh my God, they went from this cool, collected, Diane was Diane. And then, but she still was smart and clever and kind of classy in a way. And she was very, it was before the term existed, but emotionally intelligent. However, she was kind of that in that snobby sense. But it worked for the character. They made a lovable, hateable character, and it's always good to do that. But Kirstie Alley, I felt she went very neurotic, hyper female, and she's I don't want to do it all the way because I don't want to have to edit a screel later. But you know what she did. She did that. She was super emotional because that's kind of what she did. She even kind of did that in Look Who's Talking and other roles. But I learned early on I don't like that in a female character. I'm sure other people did, but it wasn't my can of beans at that point. But mostly because I would wake up to her screaming. I'd be listening to it at night, and it would hit those seasons, and then suddenly I'd wake up and it's who's dying?
No.
It's oh no, Kirstie Alley's just screaming in my nightmares. That's what's going on.
Maybe that's why L. Ron Hubbard died. I don't know, but what hasn't been said about Cheers? I mean, it's a classic show. It was actually. The producers of that show initially were looking to do an American version of Fawlty Towers, but decided to essentially take it out of the hotel and have it in a bar. It's the same type of format, really, where you have a core group of characters, but you can bring other people in and out as needed for the particular stories. I remember starting that show around the Kirstie Alley era, so... I guess for me, I don't have as much of an issue with her. I actually like her as an actress on the few things that I've seen her in. For me, Diane is just annoying. Season one of she just annoying. And,
I don't know. Again, they managed to make that lovable, hateable. A good hateable character can bring a lot to a show. And I think they made her good hateable. I think Kirstie Alley, and this is just my opinion, I don't know who all checked out at that point, but I think they accidentally made her kind of just hateable, annoying hateable. But there's actually a lot of really interesting trivia with that show. I guess John Ratzenberger, the guy that plays Cliff.
John Ratzenberger,
he wasn't supposed to be a character, I guess.
He auditioned for Norm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then all of his lines are kind of improv weird shit that he would just think to say, and they just let him have this character.
Well,
then Cliff just kind of became this weird trapped person, and half of them were made up, by the way. So, don't go. Yeah. A lot of it was off the cuff improv stuff that he did, but God, could you imagine how many times they probably lost face with some of the shit he'd say?
Well, during the audition process, during the audition process, he actually, told the producers to, every bar has somebody that, is like a Cliff Clavin, the person who, just talks a lot of nonsense, who thinks he's the smartest person alive, but really isn't. And because of that, because of the audition, they didn't think he was necessarily good for Norm, but they wanted to keep him. So, he became what he suggested. So, is what it is.
Yeah. Like, he would imply dumb stuff like that the concept of tanning came from the Bronze Age, or like he would also make the dumb jokes about living with his mother. Like, he was such a goon character, and I loved him. I loved him more than Norm. I loved him more than Ted Danson, even though I think Ted Danson is a fucking gem. The Good Place, just side note, if you haven't watched that, I personally think it's great. But he's charming and charismatic. But he did so well. Like, I felt like he should have been more hateable as a character, like Sam Malone, the character.
Yeah.
But I didn't hate him. I never thought, like, it very much seemed like that character was a character playing a character, if that makes sense. Like, that a lot of that bravado was fake for Sam Malone, and I felt like in a way it was acted, that was portrayed clearly to me anyway, even as a kid. I didn't feel like he actually really was a jerk.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I even at that young age, I knew he loved the ladies, but yeah, I didn't get the impression that, he was necessarily disrespectful or misogynistic or anything not that I knew what misogynistic was as a kid or anything, but I still felt that, he wasn't necessarily a bad guy. If that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, my next.
So what is your next one?
My next choice, one of my favorite shows growing up, one of the few shows that my mother and I both liked because our tastes were way different. That was a show called Night Court.
Oh, Night Court. That was in the background of my childhood. I vaguely remember my mom was into that.
Yeah, I mean, just through all the seasons, through watching it now, seeing like Brent Spiner, for instance, Data, he was on the show as a Southern hick who would show up, who lived with his wife in New York City, and then would occasionally have to be a defendant. And like one time I remember him talking about a hurricane that blew away his hot dog stand, and took all of his critters with it or something like that, and just the way he delivered the lines was amazing. The actors involved, John Larroquette especially, I actually got a chance to see him one time when I still worked at that horrific place, Apple. He was a customer, and I totally almost fangirled out. I mean, I didn't talk to him or anything like that, but it was just like, oh my god, it's John Larroquette, oh my god, type of deal. Harry Anderson, great as the judge. Just everything about that show. There was one woman on that show before Marky Post came along. Ellen Foley was her name. When I watched the show, I did not realize her. I didn't realize her link in rock history. I brought it up on the show before too, but do you know we've talked about the song before, and I think we've even talked about this little trivia bit. She did that duet with Meatloaf, Paradise by the Dashboard Lights. That is her singing. She also dated Joe Strummer from The Clash during that time too, and I believe she showed up as a background vocalist on a couple of Clash albums, but she was heavy in the rock industry in the late 70s, early 80s. The more you know. All right, what's your last choice?
So my last one, and man, I gotta give it to the theme songs back in the day, because I think this is another one that everybody knows, is "Thank You for Being a Friend, Up and Down the Road and Back Again." Like, come on, Golden Girls, baby. It's Betty White. She's the coolest thing since sliced bread, but I guess technically she's older than sliced bread, because now there's memes about her. And also that's another show that there's just fun facts. But I just remember this inappropriate old raunchy woman it was Blanche's character, but I didn't know that when I first started. My ears perked up, and I first recall paying attention to these things my mom watched. And Blanche said a joke that I didn't get, but I knew it was naughty. Like, I remember thinking, that was naughty, and that was on TV. And such a I haven't rewatched it, but I remember just being enamored with these old ladies and just thinking they were so silly and so funny. And then I did learn interesting trivia about it later, but that was more out of interest of Betty White. And I didn't know if you knew this, but originally when they were cast, Rue McClanahan and Betty White, they were opposite. Yeah, they were flipped. Yep. Betty White was supposed to be Blanche, but I guess because she had done like kind of a promiscuous role on Mary Tyler Moore and had done a few others, she didn't want to be typecast, so the actresses made the decision to switch. And then I guess Bea Arthur didn't even want to be in it at first. So, because she and Rue had done like, I guess, another show that I don't remember the name of, but they felt that it was just going to be doing that buddy thing with them again. And
that's the show you're talking about was a spin-off of All in a Family called Maude.
Maude. Okay, I never watched it, but yes, Maude.
I really didn't either, because that show wasn't on reruns as much as like The Jeffersons or All in a Family or anything like that. But that was what I was going to bring up too about Rue McClanahan. Rue was not excited to play ultimately the character that Betty White played, because her character on Maude was more of that oblivious type that Rose on the Golden Girls was. So they were looking to play something a little different. I'll put it this way. Go ahead.
Such a good switch, honestly. Like, I couldn't imagine that being any other way. Like, Betty White, God, some of the clips from that, back just her innocence. And, another thing, she was the oldest one. Because she was actually older than the lady that played Estelle. And because there was a big thing. Another random fact, she had gotten a facelift between 2 seasons, the oldest. And they got really upset with her because they were already having such a hard time aging her.
Oh, boy.
But, so there was a lot of interesting trivia hijinks, because they ate cheesecake a lot. I remember they ate cheesecake because I loved cheesecake, so I noticed that on the TV. And then another thing with Bea Arthur is she fucking hated cheesecake. And if you watch, like, half the time on that table, they're eating just plain cheesecake, just cheesecake. I don't know if there was a reason. I never looked. I just remember at one point learning that Bea Arthur, like, really hated cheesecake.
Oh, man. No,
But I picked up on dumb facts and remember them, more than dates of birth of, like, family members. So
that's how I got a podcast. I mean, that's me. The reason
this is why we nerd out. We nerd out over our favorite things. That's what we do.
Go. Amen to that. But the reason I cringed when you said that, it's not the show itself. I love the show. Betty White as an actress, and to your point, the fact that as an actor, it really is an art for somebody to make you believe they are believing what they are talking, if that makes sense. They are that person in the moment. Yeah, and there aren't many that can really pull that off, and Betty White is definitely one of them. The only reason I cringed was that theme song. I just have flashbacks of my sister getting up in front of the TV and dancing, and I totally forgot that the first season had the theme song in the first season replayed the chorus twice. And I would hate when that would happen, because then my sister looked like she'd almost be done, and then she'd kick in and start dancing again and start to just sit down. She's a bad dancer.
So do you still see your sister, or do you boycott her as bad as you do other people that hurt you in your childhood? This is just a good time to talk, Tim. It's a safe space.
Well, she's in Los Angeles right now walking people's dogs, so whatever works for her.
As long as Los Angeles isn't on fire yet,
Who knows? I mean, the weird thing about my sister and I is that if you put us in a room, 20 minutes later, you're going to hear yelling or something breaking. But the further apart we get away from each other, the more friendly we get. So that's...
I understand that. All my family's in Texas, and we've never gotten along better.
Yeah, I mean, but of course, I don't help matters when, I'm doing stuff like convincing my sister she's adopted and things like that. I mean, that was great. But
there's this one joke that Chris, my brother, and I still bring up of we were fighting one time, and he laughed while he was drinking a soda with all the seriousness in the world. I just looked him dead in the eye and go, "I hope you drown." And there was something about that just got us to laugh so hard. You gotta love sibling shit, man.
Yeah, it's one of those deals. It seems like the most important thing in the world happening at the time, but you look back at everything and just laugh and laugh and laugh. Like I
And that
remember.
becomes the basis for comedy.
Yeah, I mean, like one time, I don't even know if my sister remembers this. Like she went to my grandmother's house, and then I went to my aunt's house for a week, and then we were supposed to come back to my mother's for the weekend and then switch. But then, for whatever reason, there was a call, and then we weren't able to go. But when my mother was on the phone hearing the news that we would not be able to go, my sister was just looking at me with an evil smile on her face, like, ha ha, you can't go to grandma's and go to the pool, type of deal. So, fuck you, Colin.
I'm sorry she was mean to you.
Well,
sounds like you were mean to her too. So turnabout is fair play.
Yeah, I mean the adoption thing. Maybe that was a little much.
A little much. Maybe you crossed the line with the adoption thing.
A little bit, but it was worth it. Just no, I'm not. Anyway, let me get to my last choice here. This show gave us one of my favorite actors, an actor who unfortunately, due to his illness, has not been able to be as active as I'm sure he would like to be, and that's Family Ties. Another one of those great 80s theme songs, because I think the 80s were probably the last time that you had even bad TV shows had great theme songs. You could put on the theme song to Dallas, for instance, a show I never liked, but that theme song is epic as hell. Same thing with this. You put it on and it puts you in a mood and kind of gets you prepared. But, the thing I remember most, there was a 2-part episode they did that kind of let Michael J. Fox do his thing, where a best friend of his died in a car crash, and then his character Alex P. Keaton had kind of a bit of a breakdown, so he went to a therapist. And the second part of that 2-parter was him with the therapist kind of working everything out, and he ended up getting an Emmy for that. But just one hell of a good show. Justine Bateman was in it. What's her brother's name? Justin Bateman, the guy from Arrested Development?
Yes.
Jason Bateman.
I think that's right. Jason Bateman. Not Justin, Jason.
Yeah. Justine, Jason Bateman's sister, worked on that show. Just very good, high-quality show. Tom Hanks was a guest star. He played Alex B. Keaton's uncle on a couple of episodes. So, yeah, is what it is there. But any memories of Family Ties, or was that one you did not watch?
Not really a lot of memories of Family Ties. I don't remember that one even coming on in our house, but...
Yeah, if you do watch anything, definitely recommend finding that 2-parter. If you think Michael J. Fox is a great actor, this will show you why. He's very good at what he does. But you brought us an album.
Yeah, cause, I vaguely remember the show existing. I remember Michael J. Fox, young Michael J. Fox. And he was the main character on that, right? Like, he was on that the whole time?
He was. He essentially became the main character because he was the most popular on that show. Similar to, like, Family Matters, where, the show initially was supposed to be about Harriet and her husband, the cop, and their children, but it became the Urkel show after that because the Urkel character got popular. It was kind of the same thing with Family Ties, that the more people were getting into Alex B. Keaton, that character, they started writing more and more storylines for him. And obviously, with as good of an actor that he is, why not throw as much as you can at him and let him see what he can do? All right. So you brought us an album to review.
Yes, I did. This, God, I realize that's another thing we could probably totally do a whole separate podcast on, is this really awesome genre that I guess I've introduced to you. Am I understanding that right?
I have never heard any nerdcore before, no.
Of nerdcore. And nerdcore is, even just to go to Google, just so I'm not, making shit up, nerdcore is a genre of music characterized by themes and subject matter considered to be of general interest to nerds and geeks. And actually, I know the songs. It says self-described nerdcore musician MC Frontalot has the earliest known recorded use of the term, which he had a song that he did in 2000 called Nerdcore Hip Hop.
Okay, then.
So, Yeah, so that's basically nerdcore in a nutshell. And MC Frontalot, my brother actually introduced me to nerdcore, and it was funny that you brought up baby metal last week because I know he loves baby metal, and I was like, I don't get this. I just don't understand it. So I'm gonna walk away calmly and not listen to it again. But then, I ended up on my own tangent of discovering different artists in nerdcore land, and that's when I landed on Schaefer the Dark Lord, who I definitely fell in love with when I got into character work, like, especially because he is a character. Like, he does this as a character is kind of the point, in his past albums especially. And I don't know if you want me to go into anything, like, overall about this album before I get into it, because I wanted to at least intro nerdcore really quick before we got into it.
Oh, that's a great idea. I mean, because from what I'm seeing, he's not like somebody that would be featured on MTV necessarily. So, educate us.
No, I really doubt anybody's. Not many people have really even heard of nerdcore, let alone like Schaefer the Dark Lord. Like, you're more likely to know MC Frontalot, MC Lars, MC Chris, and just an interesting side thing, and we'll even get into that because you've listened to it, so you know that there are people and guests that come in. It's super common for the nerdcore MCs to guest in each other's shit. So
yeah,
overall, I love this album, and we can kind of I like an album that takes a journey, like that has an order that you listen to because it is telling you a story. And that's what this album did, and that's ultimately why I picked it over the others of him.
Yeah, I mean, when you say nerdcore, Professor Aubrey and I rewatched a movie. Have you ever watched American Splendor with Paul Giamatti?
No, I have not.
It's about the life of a comic book writer by the name of Harvey Pekar. But there's a character in that movie who talks like this. He calls himself a certified nerd, and he talks about going to see stuff like Revenge of the Nerds because it is a religious experience to him. And
is that what they're making fun of on Simpsons with the comic book guy?
Maybe, because from what I found out, that guy is the character who I just impersonated is a real person, and he actually did do some spots on the MTV in the 80s. So it may very well be. And also, being that...
That's just exactly who you sounded like whenever I was listening. I was like, oh wow, it sounds just like a comic book guy. And Simpsons, they took from so much. So
they did. It wouldn't shock me. Let's put it that way. I don't know if there was a direct correlation there, but the character was a real person, was on MTV, was in popular culture. I guess in the 80s, Harvey Pekar did a lot of guest spots on Late Night with David Letterman too. But it's just, when you said that, I just thought of this certified nerd. But fill us in on the album.
All right, so the first track is, so really the overall thing is it's kind of mocking a therapy session and kind of peppering in some of his songs throughout it. So it actually starts off with one of many little tracks where he's having this character dialogue with a therapist, which, it is that bit. That's the bit. And so there's several tracks that are kind of the same bit, so I don't feel like we have to go into them individually. But they are worth listening to. They're kind of funny, and, they do obviously correlate with some of the songs as we go through. But to go just through the list of the actual songs, and then if there was anything in those therapy sessions that we wanted to hit on, like around the songs, I figured we could. But yeah, so the first actual song is the opener. Very much it's your intro song. It's him getting up and mic check 1 2, sound guy in the booth, hey, what's up?
And that is the name of the song, by the way.
Opener.
Yeah, that is the name of the song, the opener, for folks listening. So, what did you think about the song?
Well, it just kind of goes into a little bit of introducing him and his stage performance, which I kind of liked that he did that because, again, he seemed to want this to tell a story. So if you had never heard of the Dark Lord before, it kind of gets you introduced to that. And, like, he talks about that he's an oddball and he got a lot of skills from musical theater. So just basically him getting up, introducing himself, and then it also goes into the second chorus where he starts talking about like he's got a lot of weird issues with like drugs and sex and people problems, and that's what we get into even more as we get further into these songs.
Yeah. The notes I had, the sound, I could tell he was really, and it didn't surprise me that he is based out of New York, because the sound that he had is really reminiscent of music from Def Jam Records in the 80s, stuff produced by Rick Rubin, where it does have that fusion of rock and hip-hop together. The vocal delivery, for my taste, I would say it's a little monotonous. For folks that may be listening for the first time, the reviews that I give, I'm going to critique, and if I feel there's something that doesn't fit my fancy, I'm gonna tell you why. But we don't try to do hyperbole here, because I'm the first to totally appreciate the fact that just because I may not like a particular something or other doesn't make it bad. I'm just, stating my opinion here. But what I could see, what I could see this song being more than anything else, this wouldn't shock me if this is the song that opens up his concerts, if he does concerts. Because I could see this
he does.
Yeah, I could see this as something that, he would use as kind of, to get the audience hyped up, tells a little bit about himself, but just, I could see this working better with an audience. So, for that, definitely appreciated that.
Right on. So the next song is the Do Sex. And one thing that, like I said, he's open even in like the therapy sessions, and they talk about is like,
it was Boo the Ghost. Boo, I'm a Ghost.
Oh, Boo, I'm a Ghost. So I did. Opener than Boo, I'm a Ghost. So sorry, guys. Sorry, guys and girls listening at home. I fucked that up. So the second one is Boo, I'm a Ghost, which I think this was probably one of the first songs from this album I heard from him that I loved, just because I was getting into haunt stuff, and this song happened to come up, and it's a silly song. There is a little bit of the monotonous, because I could see that, like the I'm a ghost, I am a ghost, and I go boo boo. Like it's just silly, and talking about like kind of the poltergeist stuff and making fun a little bit about that. It's like, that's what you get, you silly shit. You built your house on a burial ground, like, and other just little stabs. And then at the end, I thought it was funny that the person became a ghost. It's like, now we can high five. Look, it goes right through. Like, he's silly in a sense in some of these songs, even though he talks about inherently creepy shit. Like, this is actually one of his cleaner albums, like when I went back through it. But he really likes going to the dark and disturbed places. But this one I felt was a little bit more like silly. Like, I would almost let my stepkids listen to this song. Yeah. I think he cusses like once or twice, but he pretty much cusses in everything. So
yeah, and words are words. I mean, I know with my kids, I always felt it was important that not that they didn't use that language, but know when it was appropriate and when not to, more than anything. But that's my philosophy as a parent. This song, it reminded me.
That's how I was raised.
Yeah. It reminded me of an old DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince song called Nightmare on My Street, because the music kind of had that, it was kind of a more slower, more creepier type of music to try to spice up the lyrics themselves. I also got the impression that he is a big fan of Weird Al, in terms of Weird Al Yankovic and how he delivered his lyrics too.
I wonder.
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, if, I've talked to musician friends that, gush over Weird Al for, being a virtuoso as a musician, but...
well, it makes sense too, because every now and then, you get playlists on like Spotify or whatever, because that's how I really found a lot of the nerdcore artists that I do love, including Shaper the Dark Lord. Mm-hmm. Was Weird Al would come up too, because he kind of did touch on that, like the
white and nerdy
in my Segway, white and nerdy.
Yep. Yeah, I think if anything with this song though, and you kind of touched upon it, I'm a ghost, the constant repeating of ghost was just, edit a little bit. You know, I mean, I think one critique I have of the album overall is it is really lyrical heavy, which with hip hop I guess it's gotta be, but you know, I just wish that he would have let the music breathe a little more and kind of let the music do the work, do some more of the work in creating the emotions that he was going for than he did. So, if that makes sense.
But is that how hip hop works?
Depending on the artist, I guess. I mean, for me, I think the best artists for music that I prefer, you know, regardless of the genre, are ones that are able to have that balance between, you know, good lyrics that draw you in and music that kind of amplifies that mood. If there's too much going one way or the other, you know, if it's too much focus on, you know, having a lot of lyrics or too much focus on, you know, giving a 40-minute drum solo, it can be a little much and appeal to a smaller audience. But just, you know, overall with hip-hop, because I can see, it wouldn't shock me if he was also inspired a lot by Eminem, because Eminem does have that similar type of rat-a-tat-tat type of flow.
The style they seem to go for, and this seems to be a case across the genre, is that, like, it's a lot of, these guys had mixing boards and shit in, like, their parents' garage when they were growing up and just kind of started playing with shit. Like, I actually think he talks about that later when he does something where he gets together the reunion song that we're going to get on later, where they talk about kind of that early starting out where it was just, like, all this weird mixed shit. They never made any of their own stuff. Like, I want to say that's in there. But, yeah, so it's a very talk-heavy genre, much, I would say, like Eminem, or, you know, they didn't have a lot of, like, driving ballads mid-Eminem rap. He talked a lot. And so, yes, it is very more talky than it is, you know, musical.
Right. All right, now it's Do Sex.
Now it's Do Sex. I just wanted to get straight to the sex, that's all. It's like opener and then sex. Much like how I used to date. Anyway, so Do Sex, and this is definitely, I would say, the best thing about Schaefer the Dark Lord is just that he is ridiculous. And this song, I know he's kind of going into some of his, like, what he had mentioned in the first song of having kind of some fucked up thoughts and feelings around sex. And so it goes into a little bit of all of that, and also, like, some of that narcissism that he feels he gets into, because I think he mentioned that in the little therapy session in between these, if it didn't happen later.
Right.
But just how he has, like, this kind of a little bit of this weird, like, this narcissism around himself. But yeah, it just kind of goes through. It sounds like he's kind of in, like, a sex dungeon situation, like, kind of pre-orgy, or I didn't really get if it was, like, he just went somewhere and, like, all of these people were around ready to get their fuck on, or if this is implied to have happened after a show. I'm not sure it's that deep, but that's what she said. And so goes through all of that and, like, says, oh, and guess what? I'll fuck the ladies, I'll fuck the fellas too. Like, you know, I think he's basically saying he's pansexual, and then, like, right at the end, for seeming no reason, just, actually, I changed my mind. And then so it goes from the main lyric being, I'm going to do sex to all of you, I'm going to do sex to every last one of you, to suddenly the last time is, I'm going to do sex to none of you, not a single one of you. I'm going to do sex to nobody in this room. And I was like, for some reason, it goes this whole time spinning it up just to be like, actually, on second thought, nah. Which, honestly, thought was interesting, because there's an earlier album he did that's actually a really awesome consent song. It's a side note of its own, where it's actually talking about, like, if the girl changes her mind and says no, like, respect it. So I just thought it was funny that he did this one, where it was all this spin up and just went, like, nah, after what I felt was kind of my favorite song about sexual consent.
For me, I mean, I did think there was a lot of repetition going on in this song, which didn't make it my favorite on the album, but I definitely understood that feeling, because a lot of it, I think, it boils down to just male machismo. You know, I especially started feeling it after, you know, breaking free from the ex-wife. It's just like walking into a room, wow, I get to have sex with you and you and you, yay! And then you realize at the end of the day, maybe, you know, you don't want to, you know, hand it out like, you know, Catholic Church hands out wafers at communion or something.
Yeah,
like that.
who knows? Maybe because he did get a little bit famous. Obviously, he does have like some fame. He does have albums out there. He does do tours. So I would assume, because not reading any sort of biographical shit on any of this. This is just an album I thoroughly enjoy, and understanding that, especially near the end, it becomes really clear what it was kind of about. Was the truth of him, that all of these are about kind of truths of him as a human and a character. But, sorry, I just, looked up. It's like wearing a layer of my saliva just totally took over my eyes for a second, and I spaced on what I was going off about. But, anywho...
it wouldn't be the show without something like that happening, so...
That would be the first time a layer of saliva distracted me from conversation.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this is his sex song. This is totally just his song about sex, and the repetitiveness of the I'm gonna do sex to all of you, he says it just so many times, but then just just JK lol, done.
Bye, peace. But, alright, the next one.
Just the song's over.
Alright, the next song is a song called Mice.
This one... I'll even say, I had to, look this one up to even remember it, because I guess I don't listen to it very much, but this one I think is just kind of about, I'm assuming sleeplessness or his narcissism, but it's just talking about, the chittering and the sounds of mice, in his apartment, where he's alone, and things like that, and talking about, using traps, and I don't know, doesn't he, go into, torturing them probably at some point, because he probably did?
I don't recall that specifically.
No, he doesn't. Okay. But so I think it's more just fight back the mice that come back my way. And I'm not sure if this was even supposed to represent anything, because I think the therapist made a comment of, what do the mice represent to you? I might be remembering that wrong, but I think she does say something about it, that this was something deeper somehow. It was
the skit after this particular song, Session Part 3. The therapist, quote unquote, definitely hints at that. When I heard this song, all I could think about was the fact that I hate mice, and if I lived in a place that had mice, I would move. I don't like them. They're just horrible, evil little creatures. I would rather watch The Princess Bride than have a mouse in my house with me. So,
yeah. But it's interesting, just that fear of mice, because they're just these tiny things. But that's really all he's talking about, is he thinks they're creepy, crawly, skittery sounds. He doesn't like them.
Yeah, I mean, they're more afraid of me than I am of them, and since I got new Doc Marten boots now that make me 6'7" instead of 6'5", I could easily just to have the boot take care of the job. But no, because that's going to be the one time where the mouse will lunge and attack my neck, and you'll find mice eating my rotting corpse after that. I don't know, just because I dared to take one out. But anyway. You're like, what have I gotten into? Hey.
Oh, no, I was aware of what I was getting into. You're no worse than my worst night as a haunted house director. You're a gem compared to that. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, what's the next track?
Gosh, now I'm double checking. It's Afraid of Everything? Yeah.
Yep.
And... yeah, you basically got it. The song just nailed it right on the head. I don't think this one is as repetitive as his other ones. I wouldn't... just because he says all different stuff. He's just basically listing things he's scared of the entire time, where a lot of his songs, even the My song, had the creepy, crawly, skittery, the one lyric that kind of went over and over, and this is one of those songs where he didn't do that.
It's a weird dichotomy, though, because he's delivering it in that braggadocious way that, happens in hip-hop a lot. In terms of trying to put on airs or put on a persona or something like that. But with the subject material he's talking about in the song, it's just a weird dynamic of, I'm a big tough guy who's scared of everything. And it just, how he's delivering it and what he's talking about, just it was a weird balance for me that didn't sit quite well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense, right? This album is therapy. This is a lot of things that are coming out in therapy, quote unquote, that he hasn't dealt with, and he's making it very clear that he's dealing with it now.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I thought some of the order of the songs were interesting, but it gets made a little bit more clear later. But so he's gone from his narcissism and how he's allowed that to let him have an inappropriate relationship with sex, and then so that macho, that narcissist, and then you've got like the mice, which is almost like petty anger at something small.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got this where he's saying he's scared of everything, and oh my God, I'm scared witless of both commitment and of being alone. That's not even new. A lot of people feel that way, it seems. But I'm mortified of my ex-wife, mortified of my sex life. What was it? Petrified of failure, but less than of success. Saying he's afraid to fail, but also afraid to succeed. So really, it's kind of I felt like he brought in, I'm scared of a lot of things that a lot of people seem to be scared of, but I seem to be scared of all of them, which makes him that cowardly lion.
Yeah. It's just, again, for me, it was how he delivered the vocals. It's just, maybe that's the point, that he's delivering it that way to kind of psych himself up to not be scared of it. But it for me at least, I just didn't get that. It was a weird dynamic. That was just a little awkward. All right.
Well, one thing can be said of nerdcore: awkward is one of those things.
Yeah.
All right. So this song was one. This one kind of gets stuck in my head sometimes because it's kind of silly, and So the giant iron snake, and he's making it sound like he's basically almost in like a Zelda game or something.
Right.
And then it comes down to basically he's just talking about getting in the subway at New York. But yeah, I like it. There was something kind of fun with what he did with the background of the music. It felt very much like he was intentionally pulling you into this video game mindset. But yeah, so it felt different than a lot of his other songs, which, are kind of a bit darker and everything. So I did feel like this was one of those where it seemed like he did try to really do something more with the music to give it definition and not just it being about the message he was saying.
Well, I mean, for me, the music itself for me sounded like a pre-programmed beat from a Casio keyboard, and maybe that's what he was going for, because I did not consider what you said about the Zelda reference, the video game reference, and if that was his idea of him fantasizing that being inside of a subway car was comparable to being inside the belly of a giant steel snake or something like that, then that makes a lot more sense. But just I guess I'd have to ride in a subway to be able to relate to it more. Once I realized what he was talking about, I was just like, that's it. Yeah.
See, maybe it's because I did the train from the other side where there were tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was totally what it made me think of. It's some of when we were getting on the train by the zoo, especially because it just feels very, very underground. But yeah, I just drive my blade into the belly of the beast. I was really talking about basically. I think he's talking about swiping a bus pass or something. And then this was one where there was a session after, and she talks about asked if he often uses childish escapism to deal with mundane daily activities or something like that. No, yes, or something like that. But, I like the silliness. I like a little bit of that escapism fantasy. Because, whenever the city gets intimidating and, having to do the subway is probably a pretty scary leap if you're new to the city. So it made sense.
Speaking of the city.
Yeah, I felt these kind of went together anyway, right? Because this is directly talking about his anxiety with the city. And I'm wondering if, because, I just remembered, rats in the flood will struggle, won't survive. He talks about rats in the city and everything, too. So I think the mice may have been more exacerbation with the city. So that kind of makes sense to me, hindsight. But yeah, so I'm trying to. The city ruins everything. The city ruins everything. Just that it's a mess. It's not even a particularly long song.
Yeah, well, for me, the notes I had that it was solid throughout. It was epic. I like the drum beat. The vocal delivery is pretty solid throughout, but I think the big thing overall is that this did not have a jokey type of atmosphere to it like some of the other tracks did.
Yeah. I think all of them so far has had like at least an element of sarcasm or deflection with humor, and this one it's just right into the like very much a we're all gonna die sense level of how he feels about the city.
She says as she looks out the window with the oncoming fire.
I'm not facing Portland. This is fine. Everything's fine. Anyway, so the city ruins everything. That's what's going on with this song. So, hey, but good. I'm glad that you liked the music more to this one.
For once, gosh, yeah.
Oh, no, it's just I have this really awesome ability of picking albums that...
Well, remember, the point of the album review on this show is not even necessarily the music, but music is a great way to get to know somebody. It's a great way to kind
exactly.
Yeah, so I love the exploration like this, even for albums that I may not care for, just because it allows me to get to know the person I'm talking with, so...
And we're getting to know that the Reverend Tracy's kind of fucking weird. So, on that note... What's the next one? End of the World Reunions. This is the one I had mentioned earlier. Long before he was the Dark Lord, I was a drummer in bands. And he's talking about no Pro Tools, couldn't afford that. I wrote crappy rhymes over lousy instrumentals on my 4-track. So he's actually just kind of totally calling out how he started. And that's when Strict Kim joins him. Because I guess they reminisce some and talking about, hey, why don't we just get together? Like, I kind of thought it was funny that they did a song about getting together to do a song. And I don't know if that's not two friends having a good time. I don't know what is. So there was just a lot I loved about these last few songs that we're ramping up to. Because they just felt good to listen to. Like, this one sounded like he had a lot of fun making it.
It definitely did. I mean, it did have a lot of that Weird Al type of vocal delivery too. Kind of a thing with the Weird Al is that it sounds like when he's singing, he's sort of putting on an affectation and a little bit higher pitched, which is what I'm referring to. But yeah, I mean, the music was solid. I just. Overall, I think, but again, this is another thing where I was wishing that he did a little bit of editing with the lyrics because it didn't need to be that lyrically heavy, Yeah. So, but that's just me being a nitpicker, which never happens.
You're never persnickety.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next one I like that he brought. I didn't know who Christy B was. She's one of those I keep meaning to look her up because there's something about how her voice sounds that I thought was cool. Like she's so bright sounding next to him, and I know you just said that he was high pitched, but there was just something about her voice that I felt was an interesting contrast to him when they would sing back and forth. And talking about the whole boys will be boys concept, and it's a little bit of like a nerdcore version of anything you can do, I can do better. Like there was a point where I kind of felt that way about it, but it's like dicks are all girls can't rap, and they might do girls can't game except for Tetris, right, dude? Like, and then obviously she's up and rapping, and can do those things.
Yeah. The notes I had, I loved the background vocals that started the song, and overall the music itself, it really made me feel as if I was like in a cafe in Paris in the 60s. Just musically it was good. I felt they didn't have to find every possible way to rhyme the word boy. You know, it just lyrically it got
Yeah.
a little repetitive for my taste.
See, this one I agree with you. This one was lyrically heavy, but lyrically repetitive even for me. Like when this one comes on, I have a kind of love-hate relationship. Like, do you have those where it's like you love almost everything on the album? There's that one song that you have to be in the mood to hear.
Yeah.
And I think that's this one on the album for me. Like, I do like it sometimes, but the boys will be boys, will be boys, will be boys, like totally gets a little old. Especially if you've already heard it once in a day.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to hear it twice.
Yeah, I mean, I think back there's a podcast that Professor Aubrey turned me on to called Cocaine and Rhinestones. Kind of a really, I highly recommend it to anybody, even if you don't like country music, but it's a detailed exploration of like certain figures in country music. And on the episode that they did on Winona Judd, of all people, they talked about how I'm sure it's this way in other genres of music as well, but I guess producers in country, if they feel a song is kind of weak, they will find a way to constantly throw the name of the title track into the lyrics to kind of repeat it over and over again to get it stuck in your head, to kind of cheat its way into being a success, if that makes sense. And I thought about that when I heard this song. But so yeah, and again, if he were to hear our episode reviewing, just my opinion, not trying to knock you. You know, obviously you're making who cares about my opinion? You're making a great living at what you do. Just my 2 cents, you know.
Oh yeah. Because the point of these album reviews, everybody's got their taste.
Yep.
But so the next song though, I almost want to let you go first because I think this is probably one of my favorite songs by him because it does mix the goofy, but it also the lyrics actually have like meaning behind it and has a good message. It also feels like, you know, he's very much being himself, and a little bit like with the little whistle, the woo, like every now and then in there is just kind of funny. But yeah, what did you think of it before I just start spouting off lyrics and shit?
Yeah, let's get the negative out of the way first. There's going to be no negative. I love this song. It's the story that he was trying to tell is great. I like the chorus. You know, if I'm going to nitpick, maybe he could have edited some of the lyrics, but overall, it was really good. I love the organ solo. That stood out. That stood out more than anything. Just overall, best track on the album. And also, he varied his delivery, his vocal delivery on this song too, which was another thing that made it stand out. Because the other tracks were, even if the tracks were trying to elicit a different move, he was delivering the vocals in the same way. He varied it up here, and that, along with the message of the song, for me, best track on the album, bar none.
Yeah, especially like as a standalone song, because I have a hard time because there's the emotional element with like the very last one, which we'll get to. Mm-hmm. But especially me, like I always felt a little bit of an oddball. Something I'm fairly open about is that I consider myself to be non-binary. So kind of hearing somebody else talk about growing up and people kind of thinking you were a little weird because you didn't play with toys. Like, I played war games with my brother, but I also still played with Barbies. And it's like, yeah, I played with G.I. Joes, but they like kind of had stories with romance. And I really love watching America's Top Model and costume dramas and stuff with his mom. And I think it's almost like explaining who he is and like how he got to what he does, because that is the character. The character has costumes. The character is big and fantastical, and he's not being that character in this song. Right. Which, yeah, like most of the time when he's singing, he's in character.
And I think it's an important song for guys too, because you know what you're talking about, the gender roles. I mean, a lot of that, first of all, is simply down to advertising. You know, in terms of, you know, girls like blue. Boys like blue, girls like pink, and all that stuff. And you know, only girls can play with dolls. I think the more that men as a whole, especially in this country, but men as a whole, realize it's okay to explore your feminine side, the better off we will be overall.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
So, almost we're light at the end of the tunnel. There's a few songs left, and next one is Empty, which is something, it's one that I haven't listened to a lot of. I know it's another one of his very serious, he's not really being silly in this one. It's, that song about, I think he even calls it a bender at one point. He had, apparently had one, and this is kind of the aftermath of it, checking out my phone, seeing who he messaged.
Yeah, I mean, can definitely relate. I mean, we've all been there. But I would have to, we go from my favorite track on the album to my least favorite track. I just think, the music was way too simplistic. The vocals were put through a bit, some distortion. And that was just a little much for me. Just overall, wasn't my cup of tea though.
Yeah, not one of my, like I said, this is not one that I listen to a lot. I like the giant snake in the city a little bit more, as far as if the city being a little bit more serious than this one, but yeah, this this one doesn't have repeat
right
audio on me, but
not going to be on the car stereo.
It's worth listening to though, just to give the album a go through. And so now we are at Intervention, which is cross collaboration. Oh my God, names that if you do know nerdcore, MC Frontalot was on there. God, who else? He had Cool Z and Dr. Awkward, Dr. Awkward's great. He actually did a song with Dr. Awkward on another album, which was awesome. But I liked it. It's very much, it's just a talkie, and they're each kind of taking their turns rapping. But, so it is very lyrically heavy. But yeah, it's kind of funny to get all through them. And then I liked it when they made fun of the one, I don't know who, I think his name is Cool Z, is what I said earlier. And the only reason that stands out is I think that's the one that's not actually a rapper. And they take a break in the song is to point out you're not even a rapper. What are you doing? I was well, no, but that doesn't distract that you seriously need to get your shit together. I was duly noted. And then it just goes right back into the song. And I love that little comic break that they can just kind of make fun of themselves as friends a little, and then get back into the friends coming together to say you need help. You do a lot of shit. You haven't even done a tour in a while. What are you doing?
I like that break too. That was probably my favorite part of the song. It's a little weird that you get a song so emotionally deep and heavy with a lot of the other tracks that are going on. So ultimately, well written. It just, at the end of the day, this one didn't speak to me. I'm not gonna say it's my least favorite track in the album, because that's not the case. But something like this, I've never been through an intervention. I've never had to do an intervention for somebody, so I can't relate to either side of what's going on here.
Yeah.
So, but it does kind of lead into the next song, the last official
which is
song.
another heavy one, right? Just in a kind of different way.
Yep. That is the...
So we have heavy intervention, right? But tried to make it light, tried to make it jokey. And then we have what, honestly, I feel is... It's my favorite song just because of the mood to it and the drive behind it. There's something about how it sounds that I really like. So this is actually one of the ones I would say, I liked what he did with the music as well as the words he chose to say, which is an apology song to, he's recognizing through therapy that he really fucked up a lot of people and, maybe wasn't his best self to humans and treating them the best way through his life and owning that and very publicly doing so. And it almost sounds like anthem-y to me, like that driving music. So it just makes you want to listen to it.
Yeah, this had the most Eminem type of feel to it in terms of how he delivered it, but also in the emotion of it. I'm not going to say this is one of my favorites, but I can definitely relate to that feeling of knowing knowing that you screwed up so much that you have to make amends and that it's the right thing to do. And, again, this is another thing that more people should listen to and also, take to heart. because making amends, even if it's not about getting the other person to say, oh, I forgive you, and then, pretend nothing ever happened. It's more along the lines of acknowledging what you did, so that, because once you say it and not have somebody say it to you, that I fucked up, I did this, I did that, you are properly at that point able to start making the steps to move on and make things better.
Yeah, it's like, even he'd said it to all my family, my exes, and my fans and my friends. I can change, I can apologize, it's time to make amends. Mm-hmm. And it's like you almost wish more people could have such epiphanies, and where it's like I kind of wish songs like this took off a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, yeah. I agree. I had a thought there, but it just flew away. Anyway, overall thoughts on the album?
I mean, my overall, I like it because it tells a story. It's definitely more the story, less the music. There are a few songs on there that would definitely be downloaded on my phone to, yes, these are definite jams that I would listen to over and over. Mostly it'd be like Tom Girl and maybe that last Anthem song, just because it's got that drive. But if you enjoy listening to a character rap and have an imaginary therapy session to work some shit out about his weird fucked up sex stuff, and how he deals with living in the city, this is the album for you.
All right.
What did you think of it overall, Tim?
At the end of the day, it's not my cup of tea. And, if he were to listen to this, again, hopefully if he's gotten to this point, he knows that it's nothing personal. Taste in music is an individual thing. And just because I am not a fan of something, it does not make it bad. I learned the hard way. I came to this realization when I worked at a music store in my 20s, because the manager at the music store, it was like when Destiny's Child, the song Say My Name came out. And the person running it, every time I was there, wanted to say my name, and I just hated it. And for the longest time, it was just like, Beyonce's bad. Beyonce, I don't like her. She makes bad music, and then I had to think, wait a minute, Beyonce is selling hundreds of millions of records. She must be doing something right, just because it's okay for me not to like the song, but for me to, rip into her for making a song that's speaking to so many other people, not everything has to be for me. So is this something that I'm going to put on a playlist of mine? No. But I would still recommend everybody to give this a listen, because there are some good tracks on there that really did speak to me. Tom Girl especially, definitely recommend giving that a shout out, and I'll make sure that we have the link to his website on our Linktree app, so that you'll be able to check it out, and you'll be able to find his work on it's now YouTube Music, not Google Play Music.
You can listen to him on YouTube all day long. He's on Spotify. He's also on not Spotify. What's the other one? Quick,
Apple
Pandora.
Music?
There we go. He's on both of those, and he's definitely worth checking out. Especially Tom Girl. I give the nerddom the homework of listening to Tom Girl. Just that one. If you listen to nothing else on this album, Tom Girl.
You will be graded. Anyway.
You will be spiritually awakened.
That's from the member of the clergy, folks. That is official spiritual stuff right there. So take that to heart. So with that, We're wrapping up another episode. Thank you for coming along on the ride this week.
Yes.
You're going to be able to...
Yeah, it was a fun time.
Would you like to record again next week? Because I think I have an album you may enjoy.
Yes, you give me an album, so maybe I can, dislike your songs.
I know, right? It's a band that we featured on the show before, and the lead singer of the band ended up actually following me on Facebook because of the review.
Oh, you're almost halfway famous.
Almost, yeah. Do you remember Guy in a Buffalo?
No, but what is... Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me just get my Google on. So what's this? What's the album?
The album itself that we're going to listen to is from a band called Jomo and the Possum Posse. The album's called Let's Ride Boys. But Jomo and the Possum Posse are the ones who came out with Guy in a Buffalo. There was a movie in the 70s called Buffalo Rider, that's in the public domain. So what they did, and I know I've showed this to you. I showed it to you at the same time I showed you Kung Fury. It's kind of a joke song because the guy in the buffalo is like, one day the guy on the buffalo was traveling around through the forest and he seen a bear and he thought to himself, oh man, I gotta get away from the bear. I'll send you the link. It's amazing.
Yeah, send me the link. If you can send me the link to the album, I can listen to that and take some notes and stuff.
What is your preferred music service?
YouTube, because I'm cheap.
Okay. They got a presence
I can't chat at work because it's YouTube, so it's gonna take up my phone. It's mean like that because it wants me to pay for it and shit.
Got it. But I'll definitely send you the link. The album again is called Let's Ride Boys. What I like about Jomo and the Possum Posse is that they're one of the few bands I've heard that have been able to take humor and still have great music and meld it together. They're one hell of a funny band. But they're also a good traditional country band as well. So it'll be interesting what your reaction is.
Yeah. No, I'd love to. So you're gonna send me a link to that.
Yep.
And then, do we want to do any pick fives, or do we just want to see what kind of topic we end up talking about?
I like the idea of top 5 favorite. Just being able to have that one segment on the show that's always going to be there is one less thing I have to do. So top 5.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great formula. So what do we want to do?
Do we want to stick with TV or do movies or books or
books? I'm gonna confess something to you. I'm not actually a well-read person.
Okay, let's do TV.
I don't have a lot of books. I've got enough. I could probably do some author stuff at least.
No, we'll stick with TV. How about top 5 favorite shows from 1992?
You want to do 92?
1992. This is another reason another reason why I have the Reverend Tracy on the show, folks. She is a lot more organized than I am. I am a mess when it comes to organization, and she's a master. I bow down at her, and I try to emulate. I've been trying to emulate her. Like when I probably, if Professor Aubrey talks to you about how I've described you at starting off, it's about calendars and putting, things together like that. So, she's organized and I really love that. So anyway, another show's...
I'll be sending you the link to the Google Drive, where we will supposedly organize things and stuff.
So be prepared, folks. We're going to be fucking organized next week.
Yes, we're going to be on this.
Yeah.
On this.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We will see you again. And remember...
It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside. And when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling, the feeling that I'll be back when the day is new, and I'll have more ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to talk about. I will too. You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being you. Only one person in the whole world like you. That's you yourself. I'll be back next time. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.